Hello, and thank you for joining us for another Change Your Chat. I'm Grant Venable, Director of Change at Be the Change Volunteers. Today, we have our very good friend and changer, Lindsay Dorr, joining us. Lindsay is a member of the Columbia South Rotary in Columbia, Missouri. She is also a longtime supporter and traveling changer with Be the Change Volunteers. Today, we are so happy that she is joining us to share this platform and teach us about Rotary and its amazing mission of supporting communities both locally and globally. Rotary has a history that goes back over 100 years, and today there are over 1.2 million Rotarians serving globally. I'm glad to have one of them with us today. Lindsay, welcome.
Thank you, Grant.
So, Lindsay, we're going to dive into this discussion, but before we get to Rotary, and we want to learn a lot about Rotary today, tell us how many BTCV trips you have joined and where you have traveled to on those BTCV service projects.
Grant, I have been able to participate in a total of 6 projects. 5 of them were on-site on location in Guatemala, twice to Peru, once to Rwanda, and also to Tanzania. And then during 2020, I was able to participate in a home team build in Uganda due to the travel restrictions in place.
Nice. So you've got a lot of BTCV experience, but I think even more than BTCV experience, you probably have Rotarian experience. Share with everybody why you became a Rotarian, how long you've been a Rotarian, what's kind of your Rotary story?
So I became a Rotarian in 2009. In 2008, I moved halfway across the country from North Carolina to Missouri. And when I arrived here, I found that it was a little bit challenging to meet people and make friends in a new community as an adult. And so one of my good friends, who was also a Rotarian, invited me to be her guest at a Rotary Club meeting several times. And I very quickly realized that these are the kind of people that I enjoy being around. They have a lot of the same goals and a lot of the same values that I do. And so shortly after that, in early 2009, I actually joined Columbia Rotary South and have been a member now for, I guess that is 14 years.
Wow. That's great. So you had moved and you were looking for community, and Rotary became that first community for you. So I'm glad you talked about how it was a diverse group. What, in terms of members, is the makeup of a Rotary Club? Is a Rotary Club all doctors, all accountants? Are there different types of clubs? What's the makeup of a club?
So the makeup of the club is actually very, very diverse. Rotary actually has several levels of their club. So they actually start, when people think about Rotary, it's actually the club like I am in. We are typically individuals between mid to late 20s on up through retirement. We've had a club member that was well into their 90s and participating on an almost weekly basis. We are members of our community. We are involved in lots of service projects and organizations, and everyone from stay-at-home moms to doctors and lawyers and marketing team members. I'm a veterinarian. I found that it's a great way just to network within the community and to be able to find someone that maybe you need help with a particular project, and it's a great way to make a connection, both business and personal. The other really neat thing about Rotary is that they have Rotaract, which is actually for the kind of 20-year-olds. We kind of start those. They're actually Rotaract clubs on a lot of college campuses, okay, on up to about mid-20s. And then there's an Interact level, which is actually at the high school level. And so we all fall under the same umbrella, and it's sort of designed for people at different stages in their life and how you may want to network and connect with others that are in the same stage of life.
Wow. So I knew about the college level. I didn't know about the high school level. That's really cool. And I know that Rotary does a lot of education initiatives as well, which is one of the ways we tie in with BTCV. So that's really cool to hear that you have an opportunity for high schoolers to get involved at a younger age. So the mission of Rotary has 7 areas of focus, and I've also heard these referred to as the 7 pillars of Rotary. I'm going to ask if you have them memorized. Do you have them memorized? So that's all right. But, they are promoting peace, fighting disease, providing clean water, saving mothers and children, supporting education, growing local economies, and protecting the environment. So with that, there's a lot of things you and I discussed even before this meeting that tie into BTCV, and we'll talk about how BTCV ties in. But I find that when I go to Rotary meetings, and I've been to Rotary meetings all over the world, that those tie into each mission. Depending on where you're at, sometimes there's a higher level of focus on one of those areas, but all Rotary clubs seem to be concerned with those 7 areas. And speaking of Rotary meetings, one of the last ones I was in Uganda, and I always tell people that a Rotary meeting is kind of like a Catholic mass. They're all the same. So once you've been to one, you kind of know what to expect. And so just share with us the order of a Rotary meeting, because I bet you have this memorized because it's the same every time. What happens if I'm a guest and I show up at a Rotary meeting?
If you're a guest and you show up at a Rotary meeting, generally, clubs do. Their social time is slightly different. So my club is a breakfast club. We meet from 6:45 to 8 a.m. on Fridays. And so we show up around 6:45. We socialize with each other for about a half hour. It's a great time, like I said, to get to meet new people or to establish those relationships that you may already have a connection with. And then once the meeting is called to order, we started off typically with an invocation and a pledge. And so we pledge allegiance to the flag. The invocation is actually a little bit different depending on where you are. And even within a particular club, it varies based off of the person who's leading it. So our club members all sign up to lead the invocation at a meeting. And so depending on your faith background or your personal spiritual position, your invocation might be slightly different than the person that follows the following week. But it's a great way for us to all sort of join together and bring our minds and our thoughts together prior to a meeting. And then we lead into the actual structure of the meeting. There's business at the beginning of each meeting, as there is with pretty much every organization, announcements and things like that. And then our club actually has about a 20-minute presentation, typically from somebody locally in the community that talks on a particular subject that our club members are interested in. And then we adjourn the meeting. If you are a guest, you will be introduced to everyone at an appropriate time during the meeting. And I just have to throw in that this was actually one of the first opportunities for me to get to see BTCV and Rotary interact, because early on in my participation with BTCV, I invited Jimmy and Christy Cook to come and make a presentation at our Rotary Club. And so they were able to talk 15 to 20 years ago to our club and explain their vision and their dream for BTCV.
So I've been to Rotaries. I call them singing Rotaries. Does your Rotary ever sing?
No, in fact, we have a very running joke in our club that we are not to sing in our club. We have attempted it a time or two. We fail miserably, and we have all just kind of agreed that we're not going to sing at our club.
Well, if you're a listener, I encourage you to seek out a singing Rotary. It's worth it for the experience. They sing a song at the beginning of every meeting, and it certainly is a way to wake you up if it's a breakfast meeting, huh? So, Lindsay, Rotary has what's called the 4-way test. So let's talk about the 4-way test, because I hear this recited at each Rotary meeting, and these simple questions have really proven to create the best long-term outcome time and time again for the Rotary initiatives. So I'll read what I found online, but you can tell me more about it. So the 4-way test is a nonpartisan and non-sectarian ethical guide for Rotarians to use their personal and professional relationships. The test has been translated into more than 100 languages, and Rotarians recite it at club meetings. Of the things we think, say, or do, number 1, is it the truth? Number 2, is it fair to all concerned? Number 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And number 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And Lindsay, I've got to think that reciting that weekly and thinking about it in terms of personal life and even business, that mantra really has to have a positive effect. Can you share with us how participating with Rotary has had an impact on your life and work with those tenets in mind?
Absolutely. I think asking those questions on a daily basis with regards to each decision and step we move forward is such a big part of us being able to, again, make ethical and moral decisions. And I think that if we're continuously asking those questions, what would the world look like if we all did that on a daily basis?
Yeah.
Again, regardless of, faith or spiritual perspective, if we're all looking to build goodwill and friendships, and that every action and thought that we say and have, if it's beneficial to someone else that we're encountering, that's ultimately modeling the love and service that I think we as volunteers and also as Rotarians want to display for the world.
Yeah, I think about it just with the students that come out of our schools. If we could instill that as much as, good education, but when you get out into the world and you participate, in your career, are you being truthful? Are you being fair? Is it going to build goodwill? Will it be beneficial to everybody? I mean, if you were in sales and you did those things, you would be a top performing salesperson. If you were in medicine
Absolutely.
and you did those things, you'd be an incredible doctor. And so every time I hear it at a Rotary meeting, I think, man, that is a great mantra to hear every day, or every week, I should say, at that meeting, because it just has got to get you off on the right foot. So, Lindsay, what kind of person would enjoy joining a Rotary Club, and what would you say to encourage them to get started?
Well, I would say, just kind of in reflection, I think the Rotary motto is service above self. And I think that ultimately describes the kind of person that would fit well into Rotary. And I think that a lot of times people don't give themselves enough credit for the type of service that they can be to others. And so when I say service above self, some of us might think, well, that's not for me, or I don't have time for that. But it's just a matter of the small things that we do, and day in and day out, that can provide a service to someone else. But it can also be the big things, like going on an overseas trip to help in a community where that's needed. And I just feel like those are the types of people that we gravitate to. They're inspiring, they're encouraging, they're positive, and I think anybody can fit with that and make a great Rotarian.
Yeah, I really think about, when you're obviously a very service-hearted person, and when I think about that kind of leads us into how the BTCV mission and Rotary line up. So let's talk about that. Where do you see BTCV and Rotary line up? Because before the meeting, we were talking about those 7 pillars, and so many of them hit on a lot of our projects. Obviously, we're education-focused development aid, but where have you seen it line up? Maybe talk to us about some of the projects that we've even partnered with the Rotary South Club.
Yeah, so I think that going through those 7 pillars, if you will, having been on the 5 on-site projects that I have been on, I think we participated in most of these along the way. It's overall just promoting goodwill and educational principles, and what that actually does overall for empowering a community. And I think that's where the 2 organizations really overlap. Rotary is organized as an international organization that's made up of many, many small local clubs.
Yeah.
BTCV might refer to them as chapters, but we refer to them in Rotary as clubs.
Yeah.
And because of that, we're able to leverage resources internationally through this organization. And it's so important when we're partnering with BTCV in a foreign country, for instance, that we've been able to take advantage of some of those grant opportunities. And with global grants, you have a local or sort of initiating Rotary Club that actually partners with another Rotary Club in the community where we're doing a project.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for instance, we partnered with a local Rotary Club in Uganda in order to be able to provide water sanitation, women's hygiene products, bathroom facilities for women that allow for privacy at school and at the workplace if you're a teacher. I think that's huge. We've talked about that many times with BTCV, about being able to just allow women and particularly high school females to be able to have their own space in a school. In Peru, we were able to partner up with a club in Iquitos and provide solar power to El Chino School, which is in the middle of the jungle, for those of you guys who don't know. I was fortunate enough to be able to go to this school in 2014, the very first BTCV build. And then I was also able to go back this past fall in 2022
Yep.
and actually get to see the school 8 years later. And to be able to be a part of the first project as well as this most recent one where we were able to install power, and to see that because we now have power in that school and that it's sustainable for a jungle community, and it's not set to the standards that we as Americans necessarily have, but it provides them to be able to utilize those classrooms later in the day, and to hear, you know, the parents and some of the teachers talking about how the adults might want to actually go back and take night classes now,
Right.
because there's lights on in the school that allows them to be able to utilize that building for many more hours during the day, I think has been a huge thing, and just such a fun part of it for me to watch.
Yeah, I want to build on that for me, because you were at the very first Peru project where, you know, you walked from, you got off a boat in the village and you walked down that trail, that path that we cut through the jungle, about a quarter mile. And of course, this is a first in this village. No one's seen a BTCV group come. They've seen tourists that have gone to the lodge, but here we are getting off this boat with work clothes on and leather gloves, not with cameras and, you know, bug nets to go bird watching. So very different than what they're used to. And you walk back and you just see that open field with the very first parts of the classroom getting started. You saw all of that. Tell me about the difference in the experience, not just in the buildings, because I know when you went back the second time, you walked out there and there was a whole row of classrooms, but this is the part that I think is so connective to Rotary and BTCV and our missions, is the relationship. Tell me about the difference between working with people that first time when they didn't know what to expect, we didn't know what to expect, and we were just all trying to be friends. And then years later, you come back. Tell me about the relationship part of it.
Yeah, that was huge. And I think that's probably one of my most impactful BTCV moments, was getting off the boat this past year and being met with such a different group of faces. They were the same faces, but the expressions were so different. The very first time I was there, everyone was skeptical. I think they had seen groups of people potentially wanting to be helpful in the past, but knowing that they actually were never going to come back, and maybe they wouldn't finish supporting what they started. And you know, we had women and children that kind of took a step back. They were very skeptical of us. They were hesitant to try to communicate. They were friendly, but just unsure. And I think they recognized, much like I think sometimes we all do when we meet somebody for the first time, is that you kind of see what's different about each other. The language, the, you know, attitudes and kind of what we're all doing and cultures and whatnot. And then this time when I arrived, I mean, they met us. They were rushing to greet us. The kids were running and playing. There were just as many women as there were men in the community meeting. In fact, actually, the mayor of the little town was a woman this time. So to get to actually see that was huge, to think about some of the changes and strides and progression that have been made in this community. I also found it, you know, a little, just a part of my heart that just smiled when we were riding the boats up and down the river, and you actually saw a light on here and there in the homes. And when we started asking Dolly Beaver about that, she said, yeah, the government, because there's a school now, the government has been able to, or has issued a solar panel per home that was interested, so that students could actually participate in their studies in the evening. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that we showed up and we committed ourselves to being helpful to this community in a way that made sense to them and in a way that benefited them, and with their input and guidance and watching them work alongside of us. And so just overall, just attitudes changed, education level has improved, and even individuals that, you know, were skeptical of us to start with were so welcoming when we were there this past time.
Yeah, I love it. You were there the first time, and so you saw it, and then you saw it later. But what you just mentioned, the lights and the homes, that's a ripple effect, right? That's some of the things that come out of our projects that we might not even know about. And hopefully out of our projects, what we know is these students will go on to get better jobs and lift their families out of poverty. So one more question for you, Lindsay. Okay. Where do you want to serve next?
Oh, that's a a really good one. I will admit, so my husband has been a huge supporter of BTCV as well, but he has not been able to actually attend any of the on-site projects. And I think I have him convinced to participate in the Puerto Rico build next winter. And so there are a million places I would love to travel with a team, but it's such an important thing for me to be able to share this with Paul. And so I'm really excited and hopeful that it's going to work out for us to be a part of the Puerto Rico team in 2024.
Well, that would be amazing. We would love to have both of you join us. Lindsay, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for your heart. Thank you so much for your service, not just with BTCV, but to your local community through Rotary as well. Rotary is an incredible organization. I would encourage anybody who's listening to check it out. And also, of course, check us out online, www.btcv.us. Lindsay, thank you and continue serving.
Thank you, Grant.
If you like Changer Chats and you'd like to hear more of them, please show us with your financial support at www.btcv.us.